I say the wisdom he gave Solomon, you know, if I had 1/1,000,000th of that, I'd be happy. I'd die a happy man. Because I think wisdom is what we need. We don't need money. You know, we don't need money. You know, you don't need riches. These guys, they don't need they don't need the supermodel wife. They don't need to be they don't need to be an athlete. You know, they don't need to be a famous athlete. Who needs fame? I don't need fame. You know, I don't need fortune. I'm the richest man I know. I know a lot of rich men. But I'm the richest man I know. My wife died in December. You know, I was telling the bishop this just a little bit ago. My wife died in December. And a priest that I called, because she's Catholic, came up and he did last rites, which is a Catholic ritual. And at the end of that, he turned to me and he said, "Steve, I want to tell you something. I'm going to share this with you." Okay? He said, "You don't know what just happened." You know, now my wife hadn't died yet. We're about to pull her off her life support. He said, "You don't know what's happening here." He said, "You have no idea what this is about." And he said, "I can't tell you. I don't know." He said, "I don't know your wife. I can only tell you that there's going to be a day when you're going to know. And when you know, you'll know. You'll know what you know." That sounds kind of hokey to say you'll know what you know, but I understood what he meant. He meant one day it would be revealed to me why she died at the time she did. You know, she'd been suffering for years. I thought she had a couple more years left. So at the last day of December was my last day on the job. I retired fully. You know, I had been working since I was 13 years old. I'm 69, so I think that's a few years. I think I deserve a rest, but I have not rested. I have not rested a bit since. My life is only speeding up. And on the 1st of January, I had an epiphany. I'll call it an epiphany. Is that fair?
Yes.
It's an epiphany. You know, all of a sudden it dawned on me that the first time in my entire life since the day I was born, I was a 100% bona fide, totally free man. I owed no money to anybody. I didn't have to go to work anymore. I didn't have to worry about my wife. She was in a good place. She's in a good place. She's in the place we all want to be in. You know, if there's a heaven, she's there. She's there. The priest even told me that. He said she's going to go directly to heaven because the last thing she did on earth was go to church and pray. She went to church and prayed, and after she prayed, she basically had an accident that ended her life. Ended her life several days later, but she was unconscious for days. So her last conversation she had with me, she shared with me on the way home, was about her concern for the country. She said, "I pray every day for our president." We're talking about Donald Trump. She said, "I pray every day for Donald Trump and his wife and his whole family and for this country. Because I'm afraid it's all going to go down the tubes. It's all going to nothing." And I said, "No, honey, don't worry about that." I said, "Don't worry about that. It's not over till it's over, and it's not over." And I get this question I get these people who send me emails, and all it says is, "Tell me what you think." That's all it says. "Tell me what you think." And I end up writing 6 pages of a response. "Tell me what you think," because unfortunately, sometimes I think a little too much. But I tell them one thing. I say this to everybody. Don't take any offense to anybody. It's an old saying. I say, the fat lady ain't sung. The fat lady ain't sung means it's not over. It's not over. I said, now there's some people who want it to be over, and they're scared to death because it's not over. They were hoping to be over by now, but it's not over. There's still people out there, righteous people, who are fighting. They're fighting for this country. They're fighting for their freedom. They're fighting for their natural rights that God gave us. Because I'm telling you, there's a bunch of people right now in charge in Washington who want to take it away. They want to take all of it away. Your natural rights. They want to turn you into a drone. They want to turn you into a slave. They're going to tell you it's all going to be good. They're going to give you things. You're all going to be happy. And guess what? That's what they call a utopian philosophy. A utopian philosophy. Utopians have existed since the dawn of time. People who believe that there was such a thing as a perfect moral on earth. There's only one perfect It's not on earth, people. It's the place that God promises us once we outlast this one.
Yes.
That's when you find the perfect world. This is not it. It was never intended to be.
Yeah.
The Garden of Eden didn't turn out to be a perfect place, did it? Okay, if the Garden of Eden can't be a perfect place, and it was probably the most perfect place that we had, that we know of. If it couldn't last as a perfect place, what chance have we got? We only got one chance, and that's after this. After this. Okay, so these utopian people, and this goes back, in recorded history, goes back to ancient Greek times. They talk about that if we could engineer a society where it had a right set of rules, and everyone agreed to follow the rules, we could have a perfect society. Everybody would live in peace. Everybody have plenty of food. Everybody have plenty of good housing. We'd have the best of everything, and everyone would be happy. Okay, so who's the most modern utopianist that comes along? This cat named Karl Marx, who wrote the Communist Manifesto. It was published in England in 1849. He was a utopianist. He said, hey, I got some ideas here. Listen up. So he created the modern thing we call communism. Communism is no more than a rehash of the old utopian philosophy that says, if we write the right laws, and you guys all line up and follow these laws religiously, life can be perfect.
Oh, you're doing a good job.
Am I doing a good job?
You're doing a good job.
I'm off my script. I'm off my script. But he said that he basically tell everybody, hey, it's all about the rules. It's all about the rules. Okay? You want to know my rules? They're my rules. These are my rules. I don't need his rules. I don't need Karl Marx's rules. I don't need Karl. I've already been given rules. Follow these. What more do you need? But no, they want to write what they call regulations. They want to write laws. They want to write a rule that says, tell you when to breathe, when to inhale, when to exhale, what kind of shoes you're going to wear, what kind of pants you're going to wear. When you wake up, when you go to sleep, and you're all going to be happy because they're going to order you to be happy. You're not going to have a choice to be happy every time. It's like there's Koreans. You ever noticed when you see these North Koreans, when little Kim Jong-un is out there, and they'll go like that, clapping, big smile on their face? So let me tell you something. There's a penalty you pay if you don't clap hard enough. There's a penalty you pay if you don't smile enough. And you gotta look joyous. If he looks out there and sees a frown, he'll point at the frowner and go like that, and they get surrounded and hauled off. Because they're not with the program. The people who are with the program, they live in fear. They gotta stay with the program. I learned this from a North Korean guy who escaped. That guy actually, he escaped to China first. It took him like 2 years of dodging people that kind of capture him until he finally got to Japan. And he started talking about what it's like to be in North Korea. He was born in a prison camp. His mother was in a prison camp. His mother's crying. She got pregnant. That was a crime. She got pregnant. The state didn't tell her she could be pregnant. She got pregnant. Okay. They put her in prison camp. The kid's born in prison camp. He grew up in this prison camp. They never let his mother out. He finally got out of prison camp and escaped and ended up in China. This guy had absolutely no idea what the world was like. Because in North Korea, you're in a prison camp, there's no TV, there's no radio, there's no books, there's no magazines, there's no nothing. This guy, he was like a baby when he got to China. China at this time was going fairly modern. It wasn't as modern as it is now, but it was fairly modern. He looked and he saw cars. He'd never seen a car. He said he'd never seen a train. All he'd ever seen was within the confines of that prison camp. That was it. That was his world. That's all he knew. And he had to learn everything that we take for granted. He had to learn it all fresh. That's what your utopia does for you. That's what utopia does for you. When you think he was happy, I don't know. He might have thought he was happy. What did he know? He didn't know anything. But he was in his utopia. He was in the utopia of Kim Jong-un. Okay? So now he's in our world. And trying to learn how to be happy. I sure hope he figures it out, because I know a lot of people I know are unhappy. How's this guy going to be happy? He doesn't know what happy is. He's never seen happy. And then he comes here, when somebody expects him to be happy, there's only one place he's going to be happy, and that's when he's happy in here. You know, so when he's happy in here, that's where he'd be happy. If you ain't got it here, you ain't got it. This guy who's never heard of God, never heard of Jesus, you know, all he knows is the fences, the guards with guns. You know, he knows about the dear leader. He knows about the dear leader because that's the only thing they expose him to is he's got to love the dear leader. That's the only love he knows is the dear leader. So he has to learn it all. He has to learn it all. Now, how would you like to do that? You're blessed because you're here. You know, you're here. You know what love is. That book tells you what love is. That tells you what your responsibilities are. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Love thy God. Love thy neighbor. Very simple. How hard is it? Well, it's evidently really hard. Because we got a whole bunch of people in Washington, D.C. today that think they're running everything. They're not, but they think they are. You know? And if they love their neighbor, I don't want to be their neighbor. I don't want them people loving me like that. I don't want them loving me. I want them leaving me alone. But you know what? They're not going to leave us alone. You know? You say what you want about President Trump. It really doesn't matter. The truth is the truth. The truth is when he came in, he said, we're going to kill a bunch of these regulations and do nothing but sit on people's back. That's all they do. They're regulations to do nothing but control your behavior. But we don't need that. The government doesn't need that. They're only doing it to control people's minds and to control their behavior. We're going to start getting rid of that. And you know, he told his people, go out there and find every regulation that's useless. It doesn't serve a good purpose, doesn't support whatever law it's attached to, and just get rid of it. Just tell me what the numbers are as you get rid of them. Thousands and thousands of regulations came off the books. Did we notice that? Well, we noticed that in a way. And one of the ways we didn't notice it because they were useless regulations in the first place. They didn't serve any purpose except to harass people and to let the government. She's so sweet. They just let the government sit on top of their heads. That's all those regulations were intended to do, to sit on top of people and control them, because there's one hallmark of totalitarians, and that's what these people are. They're totalitarians. Control is what they're all about. Power and money. Power, control is power. Money. All these people love to get rich. And they just take from you, and they take from the next person, and they take from the one down the block. They take from everybody. They believe in taxes. They love taxes. They tell you those taxes are for you. Well, how come I'm not getting rich and you are? Well, obviously these taxes aren't for me because they're not doing anything but taking from me. But somebody in Washington ends up rich. Every time they raise a tax, somebody gets rich. It's like that big cash register in the sky. It goes ka-ching, 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 and Senator so-and-so who came in with a debt of $100,000 walks out with $12 million in his pocket. Well, how does that happen? Well, that happens because of corruption, and it happens because, hey, that's the game. That's the game. I want to talk to you a minute about this thing called the Declaration of Independence. Find my declaration. Got my declaration here somewhere. I gotta find it. I work with it. In this pocket? I'm about to empty all my pockets here to find my declaration because I know I packed it in here somewhere. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Not there. Okay, my declaration's hiding from me. It's embarrassing. My declaration hiding from me. I want to talk to you about the Declaration, about what it is. We hear all the time, we hear these politicians stand up and they're talking about the Constitution. The Constitution this, the Constitution that. Everybody likes to talk about the Constitution. Even the people who are trying to kill it will sit there and quote the Constitution and tell you how important it is. Well, I'm here to tell you something about what the Constitution is and what it is not. If you go look at the U.S. Code, all of our laws are in these books called U.S. Code. All the laws in the United States are in books called U.S. Code. You go to a law library, you say, where's volume 1? I want volume 1. I want volume 1, book 1. Volume 1, book 1 of U.S. Code. You open that up, and the very first thing you see, you think it's the Constitution? I'm here to tell you it's not. It's not the first. It's not the second. It's not even the third law of the land. It's the fourth law of the land. The first law of the land, primary law, Declaration of Independence, is law. It's not taught in schools. Nobody knows it. Nobody reads it. You might have read it once while you're in school. They said, let's read the Declaration of Independence. You read it and go, well, I'm glad that's done. That was boring. Okay, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't understand the language. You know, they use words I don't understand. The syntax is weird. These people are out of the tree. I don't know what, I know it's about King George, but that's all I get out of that. Okay, that document is the moral foundation of this country. It's written right there. It tells you why this country exists. It is actually, it's a declaration. It's a Declaration of Independence. It's a letter to King George. It says, King George, listen up. God gave us all this stuff. God gave us all this stuff. You didn't give us all this stuff. God made me who I am. God made me a free man. You didn't make me a free man. We're born free. We're born free. Everybody, whether you know it or not, every human being is always, always, always born free. And governments only do one thing to you, and that's take that freedom away from you little by little. Now, we all know about the history of slavery. Now, that's a sad chapter. It's really true, but, you know, there's always been slaves.
Yeah.
And in mankind's history, there's always been slaves, and there are slaves today.
Yes, it is.
And there may be more slaves today than there ever was. You know, they sell them. I mean, Libya, you can go to the slave market in Libya today. Right there in Libya, you can find, I think a healthy adult male goes for the equivalent of about $49. About $49 will buy you a guy, you know, who will go and fetch for you. He's somebody that they kidnap somewhere. You don't know. All you know is that, hey, you want him, he's yours. You know, if you want to kill him, you can kill him. If you want to, just for kicks, if you want to kill him, you can do that. He's yours. They don't care. So slavery is what it is. But those people, even though they're slaves, you can be born into slavery. That doesn't make you not free. Freedom is here. Freedom is what God gave you. Freedom has got, and you've got to, and maybe you might have to fight for your physical freedom, but your spirit is free. Your spirit is only a captive if you allow it to be. If you allow yourself to be a captive, you can be a captive. But I can tell you right now that if you go down in a dungeon and you find somebody hanging from chains on the wall, if he's the righteous kind of person, and you say, tell me what you are, and he might tell you, I'm a free man. They can hang me from this wall until I rot. But I will die a free man because it's my spirit. It's my spirit that makes the difference between being a slave, being a captive, and being free. It's my spirit. My spirit, hey baby, how you doing? Yes, look at you. Pardon me a second. Yeah, she's so sweet. Yes, you are, you know. So if your spirit is free, it doesn't matter what's happening to your external, this bag of bones, you know, it don't really matter. It's if your spirit is free, you are free. But, so I told you about governments. All governments do to you is try to take that away, they chip it away. All governments do it. I'm not saying all governments are corrupt, but even the best government infringes upon your natural rights. And you always have to resist that. You always have to resist that. Even the best government needs to be resisted once in a while. When they step out of line, you got to stand up and go, no, we don't do that. We don't. I'm not going to allow you to do that to me. That's not right. God gave me this right, not you. If God gave me this right, you don't have the power to take it away.
That's right.
I have the power to stand up and say no. And we need to hear a lot more no's in this country.
Yes.
A lot more no's. And that's our job. Okay, so when you look at the Declaration of Independence, it's kind of broken up into two major sections. The first section talks about your natural rights. It talks about God-given. It talks about God. It's sort of an indirect way, but sort of a direct way. You have to understand the way they express themselves at the time. And it talks about the duty of citizens. The duty of citizens. And it tells us that when our government is infringing upon our rights and becomes a tyranny, it's our duty. I wish I could do that. It's our duty as free citizens, free men, free women, free human beings, it's our duty to resist the tyranny. It's our duty to stand up and say no, and that's what they were communicating to King George. We know you're the king, but you've been a bad king. You've infringed upon our rights. You've trampled on us. You've singled us out for disparate treatment, as it turns out. And we're telling you, you can take a hike, because we're going free. We're going to free up this country. We're not going to pay any attention to you anymore. You mean nothing to us. That's what the first part of the Declaration of Independence says. The second part is about, I counted them, but I'm old, so my memory is kind of faulty. So I think there's 27 charges in the Declaration of Independence. Very specific things. They said, this is what you've done wrong. We're going to list them for you. In case you don't know, we're going to list them for you. I think there's about 27. Before I counted them, I thought there was 18, but I think there's 27. And they're sentences. They said, basically it says, you did this. And the implication is, that was wrong, and you wronged us. Now, if King George had done that to all of his colonies, because we're looking at Great Britain. Great Britain was the empire that the sun never set on. They had colonies all across the world. If the King George had applied all those things that was mentioned in those 27 lines, equally across the entire empire, and they applied equally in Britain, we wouldn't have had a complaint. We wouldn't have had a leg to stand on. We might not have had that revolution. But unfortunately for King George, he singled us out. He singled us out for special treatment, talking about the colonies. He singled the American colonies out. He imposed taxes that weren't levied anywhere else, and restrictions on them. He did strange things. When you read it, I mean, it even has one line in there that talks. I hadn't read it in a long time, so when I read it, I go, wow, I don't think I captured what they're really talking about. In that day, the king had agents of the king, and they carried badges that said, I work for the king. And in the colonies, when that agent of the king got hungry, all he had to do was walk in someone's house. He didn't have to knock. He was the agent of the king. He just walked in and said, I'm hungry, feed me. There's my badge. And you were obligated as a citizen of the crown, of the colony of New York or Maryland or whatever, you were obligated to feed him. You couldn't say no. It was your job, your duty as a citizen of the British crown to feed the guy. Yeah, you had to just, if you didn't have it, you had to cook for him. That was right there. They were doing that all the time. Then they had what they call watch, quarter, and stationing, where, let's just say they had troops that were moving through, they're going from one place to another. And overnight, they just kicked in doors and said, we're staying here. If you didn't like it, you could leave. But they were staying in your house. If they're going to eat your food, they might kill your pigs, cook your pig, They just, it's whatever they want to do, they had the right to do it because they worked for the king. That's the kind of stuff that was going on. And that's why we had the revolution. All right, now why I'm bringing that up is if you go and you start looking at those 27 lines, you should, if you understand what's going on in this country today, you should recognize a few things, because a lot of those things that they were complaining about back then that they all fought and died for to create this country, they're doing today. They're doing right now. And nobody understands that, because the press doesn't tell you. The press doesn't break it down for you, because nobody in the press wants to talk about the Declaration of Independence. They'll talk about the Constitution all day long. They don't want to talk about that Declaration of Independence, because the Declaration of Independence does a couple things. One is it reinforces the fact that we work for God. We don't work for any king. We got one boss. We got one boss we acknowledge, and that's the man up there. He tells us who we are. He tells us what we are. He tells us what rights we have, and he tells us how we got them. Now, no king can do that. All a king can do is infringe upon what God gave us. That's all in the world he can do. You've gotta get that, everybody's gotta get that through their head. That's why you never hear on TV today, when you watch most of those, what they call the mainstream media channels, you never hear them mention the Declaration of Independence. They always focus on the Constitution. Constitution is the rule set for the government. It's how the government is organized. It's their rule book. It's supposed to be, because they violate it every day. But it's supposed to be the rules. It's process, people. It's not principles. The Declaration is principles. You want to understand why you're somewhere? You look for the principles, and you study those principles. That tells you who you are, and who's who in the zoo, I'll put it that way. That tells you that. The Constitution doesn't do that. The Constitution is process. You know, everybody's got to understand that, but they don't want you to. I saw an amazing thing on TV one time. I don't remember what I was watching some news show. I think it was on one of the, might have been on CNN. Sometimes I channel surf just to see what the crazy people are talking about. Yeah, I gotta keep track of it. What are the loonies talking about today? And there was a little panel discussion. And you know, when they have one of these discussions, they always have their duty victim. They got their conservative. He's the duty victim because he takes a lot of slinging arrows. Yeah, they're paid pretty well, but they're paid basically to take all the stuff that the other people at the table give them because he's made to look like a fool. Well, one day they were in a debate and they were talking about abortion. One of their favorite subjects, you know, because all of us crazy people think abortion is bad. We think abortion is immoral. We think it's wrong. We think that life is a gift from God, and it shouldn't be thrown away. That if a child's going to die, that might be an act of God, but it shouldn't be an act of man. You know, it shouldn't be our act. You know, once that child is conceived, it's not the child's fault that they were conceived, and they shouldn't be terminated, and their life shouldn't be held as cheap, as to be thrown away, cut up, thrown away in the trash like a piece of trash. No human being ever born was a piece of trash. They might have made themselves a piece of trash, but they were born as a free child of God.
Yes.
Is that not true?
That's true.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm telling the truth.
It's the truth.
I say it wrong, you tell me, Bishop. All right, so in this panel discussion, they're talking about abortion. And the duty conservatives starts off his commentary with, well, according to the Declaration of Independence. Holy cow. If there's a holy cow, that was a holy cow moment. I'm telling you, the table erupted. Everybody started talking at once. And I was just sitting there, my mouth just fell open. I knew what I saw when I saw it. They don't want this man to say another word. Not a word about the Declaration of Independence. They don't want you to know what the Declaration of Independence has to say about that, because they don't want you to know about natural rights. They don't want you to know what God gave you. They only want you to know what they're taking away from you, but they're going to tell you that's a gift. They're always giving you stuff. You know, there's no such thing as a free lunch. You ever hear that? People, there is no such thing as a free lunch. When somebody gives you something, guess what? One hand's giving, two hands are taking. They're taking from you. They're not giving you anything. You already got all you need. The next thing you need is to be left alone. Left alone. And these governments won't leave you alone. They make it their job to get into your life and tell you how to live it. They tell you if you don't live it the way they tell you, they're going to come for you. They're going to punish you. They're going to put you in jail. They're going to fine you. They're going to take away your property. You know, you have a God-given right. Property, did you know that? That's a natural right. It's in the Bible. You can own stuff. You know, it says it right there in the Bible. Many places they talk about what's yours is yours. You know, what's God is God's. What's yours is yours. God acknowledges the fact that we have stuff that we call ours. That's okay with him. That's the way it's supposed to be. All right. Let me transition now. I want to see a show of hands. Who understands what a spirit warrior is?